Alrighty, so this is my first time using this software, so I'm hoping it works out pretty good because I did want to try to do something different. That's acting a little funny. So this is treasure. I want to say around. Okay, that's. I think it's the next page. We're going to talk a little bit about um, magical research. So we've brought this up a little bit. Um, this is so acquisition of spells. Now, the way that I normally do this in my games is that the if it's being copied out of another spell book that belongs to another magic user, then it is 500 gold pieces per level, spell level, to do that. If they are copying it through a scroll or maybe another magic book that they found out in a dungeon somewhere, as long as it's not, as long as it's not owned by somebody else, then it's 250. So that's the way I've run it. But we are going to go through this. What is the rules is written? What are some options you can have? So acquisition of spells, clerics have an obvious advantage over magic users in that, in theory, they have access to any spell at any level which they can cast. However, note that clerics are limited in their spell selection based on their deity, faith, ethos. For instance, a cleric of the goddess of healing should not be surprised that his or her deity refuses to grant reversed healing spells. That's true. It's one of the reasons why when I have a cleric, I ask them what their particular alignment may or may not be. Um, if a cleric prays for a spell that is not allowed, the game master may choose to grant the character a different spell, or optionally, if the deity is angered, no spell at all for that slot, which is something that I've not exactly used. I have done a little bit of role playing, but I haven't done it so far. In that, like I'll try to like say that Sogor talks to Karpanek, and and we go from there. I haven't done it in a while, honestly, because it actually became kind of not necessarily so useful. You know what I mean? But like, I still have plans for if he uses certain spells, he gets bonus XP. Because out of everybody in the party, he gets no bonus because he's a dwarf. Um, Magic users begin play knowing two spells: read magic plus one other, unless the GM grants more starting spells. Now that is optional. Personally, your intelligence bonus doesn't matter for for how many spells you get at level 1. All that determines is language. But if you decide, it all depends on what kind of what kind of magic you're doing for your campaign. If you are doing high magic, you want pizza? I don't have pizza. Pizza, yay! But if anyways, so like it literally only affects what kind of languages, how many languages you know. Uh, Unless the GM grants more starting spells each time a player character gains a level, he or she gains the ability to cast more spells. In addition to every other level, the magic user gains access to the higher level spells until all levels are available. However, gaining the ability to cast these spells does not necessarily mean the magic user instantly learns new spells, and that's where we have come through with verisimilitude. You want to go, mommy? Okay, well, you give me just a second, and I'll pause this, and we'll take you to mommy. Oh, give me a second, fellas. We'll pause this recording for a minute. Okay, so we're going to get to she's kind of calming down. So, magic users may learn spells by being taught by another magic user or by studying another magic user's spell book. If being taught a spell can be learned in a single day, researching another magic user's spell book takes 1 day per spell level. In either case, the spell learned must be transcribed into the magic user's own spellbook at a cost of 500 gold pieces per spell level transcribed. And so that's kind of like how I've done. And if they find something, in the dungeons, I decide, they can get a little bit of reward. Oh, I want this in my personal spellbook. Well, okay, well, that'll cost me, to try to cut down on encumbrance, right? Because encumbrance should be a thing in your game. Should be. Like, you don't want them to be walking armories, so that's the thing that I feel like kind of helps with that. Scrolls, I've made up my own little ruling on that. If they transcribe from a scroll, 250 per spell level. Now, when the case of time, because my guys are still kind of fairly low level, I've never had a magic user end up taking a second level spell slot or a second level spell yet. First level spell so far. So when they get second or third level, he'll have to spend like 2-3 days learning it. So, but there you go on that part. Let me click that little button off. I noticed that was up. Magic user may add a new spell of any level he or she may cast at any point. However, spells of higher levels may not be learned or added to the magic user's spellbook. So, like, a magic user must find a teacher or acquire a reference work, such as another magic user's spellbook, in order to learn new spells, and the cost of such is in addition to the costs given. Often a magic user will maintain a relationship with his or her original master, who will teach the character new spells, either for free or in return for services, and that's something that needs to be established at the beginning, which we can try to figure something out. For example, I don't know what Gwydion's particular teacher, who they may or may not be, but so far he's around Thalen, so Thalen might be able to teach him for free from here on out if he chooses to be an apprentice of Thalen Terramedes. But that's for a different time, so we'll figure that one out. That's something that I'm going to have to ask Gwydion's player. Who is your master? So, anyways, sometimes two magic users will agree to exchange known spells. In many cases, the only option available to a magic user will be to pay another magic user, often an NPC, anywhere from 100 gold pieces to 1,000 gold pieces per spell level in return for such training. So there's another option right there. That that's driving me nuts. Magic users may also create entirely new spells or alter existing spells. See magical research rules below for details. And that, of course, is, that all comes down to, okay, it's a time-honored tradition for players to homebrew stuff. And, of course, a lot of the times this stuff is, to be honest, broken. So it's kind of like, I would suggest in a situation like that the player and the game master kind of get it with each other and try to cooperate towards something that's going to be balanced, but also fun. You want it to be rewarding for the player because, hey, this is the thing that you made up. Let's see what it does. And it could be something as mundane as like just making cosmetic sparks fly from their hands, or like prestidigitation, like we make something dirty or clean, or optical illusions with the hands. Something as simple as that. So, with that, we're going to actually get into actual magical research. Give me a second to find that page. I'm going to pause the video here once Chrome decides to quit being slow. So we're getting into the meat of it now. The actual magical research proper. General rules for research. At some point, a magic user or cleric may wish to start creating magic items or inventing spells. This is termed magical research. For any research, magic user must have a tower or laboratory, while a cleric requires a properly consecrated temple or church of his or her faith. So obviously, this is kind of like higher level kind of stuff. In addition, there will be a cost for the creation of each item, a minimum time required to create it, and a given chance of success. If the roll fails, generally the time and money are wasted, and the procedure must be started again from the beginning. However, consult the detailed rules below for exceptions. In almost all cases, the game master should make this roll in secret. There are many situations where the character or the player should not know whether the roll has actually failed, or whether the GM has decided the research is impossible for the character. The GM may decide to tell the player that the research is impossible if the roll succeeds. If the roll is a failure, that is all the players should be told. In general, clerics may only create magic items reproducing the effects of clerical spells. Clerics may also make enchanted weapons and armor, even those sorts which they may not use themselves, since they may be creating weapons or armor for other followers of their faith. For example, like if you have a fighter that is like a temple guard or something like that, clerics can't use bladed weapons. Fighters can, or maybe a thief, who's like a a tomb robber to try to uncover an ancient temple, of the faith and blah blah blah. Point being, they use weapons that clerics are not allowed to use. So you can like have the clerics essentially bless the weapons, and that's how you should view this. Uh, a cleric will bless, whereas a magic user enchants. So, and it all, like the rules say, all comes down to the faith of the cleric. Um, Magic users may create any sort of magic item except for those reproducing clerical spells for which no equivalent magic user spell exists, right? So, like, use the spell index in the front of the book. If a magic user can't learn it, then they can't do it. Time spent doing magical research must be 8 hour workdays with interruptions lasting no more than 2 days. Longer interruptions result in automatic failure of the project. The GM may, if he or she so desires, grant experience points to characters who successfully complete magical research. It is suggested that the rate of such rewards be 1 XP per 10 gold spent on the research. This award may be granted for all research or only for creation of magic items, or not at all if the GM prefers to emphasize adventuring for advancement purposes. So, like, what you're doing here is like, I love the idea of granting bonus experience points for something besides grabbing gold and killing monsters. Um, I love that idea. People generally, and it's kind of like why I try to give bonus experience to the thief that detects the trap or disarms it, or the fighter who um, does a good job guarding their fellows. Like, bonus experience is not a bad thing. You can be a little bit too generous with it, but by and large, like, it's not a bad concept to begin with. And so we do have like this kind of prerequisite here in Raw for bonus experience. So, just as an aside, I know I'm going off on a tangent here. That's almost like a non sequitur for what we're talking about, but just to give you an idea. Spell research. Researching new spells is the most common type of magical research. Magic user may research a standard spell, removing the need for a teacher or reference. Alternatively, alternately, a cleric or magic user may research an entirely new spell. Of course, no character may invent or research a spell of a level higher than he or she can cast. This is important because clerics, as we know, I'm going to see if I can't move this. There we go. Okay, so that's important because clerics uh, don't learn spells at level 1. They learn at level 2. That's when they get their first spell slot. So, I mean, that's just as an aside. So, obviously, that's important. Like, a level 1 cleric can't learn anything. Give me a second. The youngster finally passed out. She doesn't feel too good. She's been very clingy. If the character is inventing a spell outright, the GM must determine the spell's level and judge whether or not the spell is possible, as is. The GM does not have to tell the player whether the spell is possible. In fact, this may be preferable. The cost of research a spell is 1,000 gold pieces per spell level for standard spells, or 2,000 gold pieces per spell level for newly invented spells. In either case, 1 week is required per spell level to complete the research. The chance of success is 25%, plus 5% per level of the character, minus 10% per level of the spell. The maximum chance of success is 95%. So we have this prerequisite because what it is like what makes it different is that you're not going to a tutor. You're trying to essentially come up with a spell that you've heard of. May or may not be an existing spell, might be something totally new. But this is kind of like somebody says, "Oh, I want to learn sleep," and they don't know anybody that knows sleep. Well, then that's going to be a little rough. So the chance of success is 25%. So plus 5% per level of the character. So that would let's just take. Okay, I got a calculator here, so we can take that. We can do something with it. So we're going to take 25% for sleep because it's a level 1 spell, plus 5% for the character level per character level. So we're going to say a level 1 magic user at this point. Minus 10% per level of the spell. So minus 10 from that, and we end up right back because it's a level 1 spell. We end up at 20% chance of just coming up with sleep out of the blue for whatever reason. Whereas if this was a magic user who was, let's say, level 10, so 10 times 5 equals 50. So, and then we plus 25 for the chance of success, minus 10 per level, 65% chance. So, just to kind of give you an idea. This is why you should want to stress the tutors, because in the long run, it's cheaper and more successful. Whereas in the short run, trying to come up with it, not only do you have the possibility of not only are you spending a lot of gold, but you have the possibility of failure. So you just wasted gold. If the research roll is successful, the character may add the spell to his or her spell book if a magic user, or may subsequently pray for the spell if a cleric. On a failure, the money and time are spent to no avail. Clerics of the same deity, faith, or ethos may teach each other the prayers required to access new spells. This takes 1 hour per spell level. Procedure to exchange spells with other magic users has already been explained in their acquisitions of spells above. Now, I would rule that if in the case of you have multiple magic users within one party, if they wish to make money off of this, they certainly can. But I would say, if they're trying to do it for the greater good, let them essentially just pay for the components, like the parchment, the ink, and all that, and any kind of magical doohickeys, ingredients that they might need to figure out how the spell works, blah blah blah. So make that kind of cheaper on them, but still cost them some money. Whereas with clerics, it's going to cost them time, which it would cost the magic user time too. But the trade-off is the fact that the magic user spells are definitely more potent than cleric spells, which are generally for support. Whereas magic user spells seem to be more offensive and about control. Kind of to kind of use the chainmail equivalent, auxiliary, artillery, I should say. So it's literally like the difference between having a medic on the field versus having a stinking artillery gun on the field. You know what I mean? So just as an aside, so that's kind of a holdover from chainmail, I would suppose, but that it does make sense. Magic user spells are more potent and do a little bit more, whereas cleric spells are very beneficial to individuals and stuff like that. A magic user can't heal a like a they can't heal at all unless they like take up some kind of like side trade of trying to learn how to make potions. In which case, that's an interesting idea. So, as mentioned above, the GM may decide that a proposed new spell is not correct for his or her campaign. Absolutely. You assume authority as the game master. If it doesn't work for your setting, don't use it. Um, Too powerful, too low in level, etc. Rather than tell the player this, there are two strategies that may be used. First, the game master may decide to revise the spell. Again, cooperate. It's a group effort, it's a group game. Cooperate. I mean, you are the final say, but don't be a butt. After all, who likes a boss that absolutely will not allow them to take a vacation day? Nobody. So, if the roll is successful, the GM then presents the player with a revised write-up of the spell, adjusted however the GM feels necessary for the game balance purposes. Alternative, uh, the alternative more appropriate when the game master believes the spell should be higher level than the player character can cast. Let's make the roll anyway. If the roll fails, that is all the player needs to know. But if it succeeds, the GM should then show the player the revised version of the spell. Explain that the character may try again when he or she attains a high enough level to cast it. In this case, the GM may allow the character to reduce either the time or the cost by half when the research is attempted again at the higher level. All right, because like you're doing sciencey stuff. So like you remember your conclusions from the previous experiment. And of course, my magic item research, which is something that doesn't really get brought up a whole lot, especially in early level games. It's more of like a late level game. But it came up in our last game because Carfanek wanted to know if he could essentially upgrade his armory, his weapons and armor, without having to find something brand spanking new in the dungeons. So any character who wishes to create magical items must know all, if any, spells to be imbued in the item. Items that produce effects not matching any known spell may require additional research to devise the unknown spell, if the GM so desires. Some magic items require one or more special components that cannot usually be bought. Special components can only be used once on such a project. For example, the GM may require the skin of a displacer to create a cloak of displacement, or red dragon saliva to create a wand of fireballs. Note that there are specific rules for components under other magic items below. Special components requirements are entirely at the option of the game master and are usually employed to slow the creation of powerful magic items that might tend to unbalance the campaign. It's also a good way to lead the spellcaster and his party into dangerous adventures. So, yeah, there you go. Like, be creative. What does a wand of illusion? What is it made out of? What is a +1 short sword? That kind of thing. Like, what in the world? How do you bag of holding? It's like something right, to consider. So, scroll creation, because this does come up. Spellcaster may create a scroll containing any spell he or she has access to. So, for example, Carfanek, the cleric, wanted to make an extra Cure Light Wounds scroll so that he didn't have to waste a spell slot in the dungeon. If he needed just that one extra thing, he could have it. So he borrowed some parchment and stuff off of Gwydion, and he still had to pay gold. But for a magic user spells in his or her spellbook, for a cleric, any spell the character might successfully pray for. Cost is 500 gold pieces per spell level, and the time required is 1 day per spell level. So I might have ruled that a little bit, because it didn't take quite a day, but I think I did rule that he did spend quite a bit of time on it, which it was at the end of the session anyway. So it's like it didn't really matter. Reduce the chance of success based on the level of the spell being prescribed at a rate of minus 10% per level. If the roll fails, the enchantment of the scroll has failed. However, if the caster tries again to inscribe the same spell, either the cost or the time is reduced by half at the character's option. So that one I did remember to do was to roll for success, and of course, Karfenek passed. I seem to have lucky percentile dice, and so it's a shame I'm not a player. Well, I'm a player, but not in that way. I do okay, and I do play in Karfenek Spec Me game on which we're supposed to play tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to it. So we are going to okay. Now all this stuff like very short and simple and stuff like that, but let's talk about enchanting weapons. That came up. The base cost of enchanting weapon or armor is 1,000 gold pieces per point of bonus. For weapons with 2 bonuses, divide the larger bonus in half, don't round, and add the smaller bonus. Thus, a sword +1 +3 versus dragons would cost 2,500 gold pieces to enchant. Enchanting a weapon takes 1 week plus 2 days per point of bonus. Thus, the sword described would require 12 days to enchant. Reduce the chance of success by 10% times the bonus. So, a sword +1 would reduce the base chance 10%, while the sword +1 +3 versus dragons described above would reduce the base chance by 25%. Further, the chance of success may be increased 25% by doubling the cost of time required. This decision must be announced before the roll is made. For weapons having additional powers, combine the rules above with the rules for creating permanent items. All enchantments must be applied in a single enchantment session. So, like, it's not like you can take like if you've already enchanted a sword to be +1, it's not like you can take it back and get it enchanted to like a +3, unless you're running like a particularly high magic setting. But like in most of the settings that I would run, like if it's +1, it's going to stay +1. There's nothing more that can be added to it. She's tired. She's had a rough week. Anyway, so other magic items. So let's talk about this real quick, and then I guess we'll be done. Other magic items can have several features. Each feature added to a magic item increases the cost and time required and decreases the chance of success. The features are as follows: creates a spell or spell-like effect. Oh, sorry. This is a basic feature of all non-weapon magic items. The base cost of this enchantment is 500 gold pieces per spell level. Time required is 5 days plus 2 days per level. If the magic item has multiple spell and spell-like effects, add the cost and time figures together. The chance of success is reduced 5% per spell level. Has multiple charges. This includes, of course, wands and staffs, but several other magic items would also have charges. Like, for example, anything that drains energy. You know, uh, one of our characters that no longer plays with us, he ended up having like a hand axe that did like level drain, in addition to being +1. So he had something very, very stupid, but he never got to play to have the chance to use it. So it's what it is. Each spell or spell-like effect normally has a separate pool of charges, but see next. The table below shows the various maximum charges, the charge levels, and the associated cost, time, chance adjustments. Like you have, you have all this. So, um, I guess I'm going to get off because apparently Screencastify is hitting its limit for my first session. So, uh, as always, take care. God bless. See you on the other side in 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.